Hi, my name is Joyce Vaudrey, and we are doing our CVC interviews with Antonia Edwards. Tonight's topic is not as lighthearted as we usually like to be, but is extremely important, and we love sharing information that's important and can also be helpful. Unfortunately, sometimes some people's tragedies have to come to light in order for others to be helped. And that's why Antonia is here today with us. So without further ado, Antonia Edwards, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad
it really means a lot to me.
We can't do enough to help when
Yes.
things like this happen. So I'm so glad you took Melanie up on the invitation.
No problem.
And we are really glad to be able to bring some very important issues to light.
Yes, and I'm glad you are able to have me here too as well.
Overall, we're talking about your organization,
Yes.
SoliDarity.
Yes.
And the crux of it is mental health for children in Connecticut.
Exactly, and also for those in the underserved communities.
Focusing on the underserved
Yes.
communities. I want to talk more about that. I do want to let folks know that there are ways of connecting with
Yes.
SoliDarity and other services through the Vernon Community
Yes.
Network.
Yes, exactly, VCN.
VCN.
Yes.
And we have a lot of great services in our state and in Vernon. You know, a lot of times I have to say, hi, Joyce Vaudrey from Vernon, because
Yes.
with our accent, I say "our" because
We're from Boston.
we're from Boston. We found out we have that, you know, that
Yeah.
history. But yeah, this has been my home for years.
Yes.
But you can take the girl out of Southie, you can't take Southie out of the
Exactly.
girl. So
Exactly.
I have been fascinated with the amount of support available. What is very frustrating for me, and I think I heard it through your voice when we were
Yes.
chatting before, is the frustration of there are services.
Right.
How do we get the information?
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about SoliDarity, and I did see it on, it's got a great Facebook page.
Thank you.
But give me a great summary of what we can expect on SoliDarity.
So SoliDarity is a grassroots organization that I created with my two partners. They're both male, one older, one younger, and we did this because they're both natives to Connecticut. I thought it was really important to get involved with people who actually were on the ground. I am from Boston. I've been here this time 5 years. So I wanted to make sure that when I came back to Connecticut this time, I hit the ground running to do legislation work, but I also wanted to have a pulse to what's going on within the communities. SoliDarity started off with getting into different legislation, like I've worked with Senator Anwar on racism as a public health crisis. I also worked with Sarah Bronin with DSEG Connecticut. And then more recently, Senator Kelly with the SB 5001, which is the Children's Mental Health Crisis Bill. So SoliDarity basically fights for everybody. However, we put an emphasis on those who are in the underserved communities, both black and brown, or even poverty, I'm saying a Caucasian, who are basically being shut out of mental health services, medical services, because of the disparities. And so I fight for the underdogs. I started doing it because my son's autistic. I've been doing this since '99. He's now 23, and I've always fought for children with disabilities. I'm a trained advocate to do so. However, when I got to Connecticut, I found out there's just more than just people with disabilities. It's people with mental health, and people think that mental health is not a disability, and because you can't see it. So I hit the ground running. I've been fighting and learning the system since I've been here. I've had some wonderful encounters with legislators, the lieutenant governor, and the governor as well too. And I just feel like people in the community need to know what transpired as a result of everything that was done. It wasn't all good. And as a result of it, I'm now here to say that we weathered the storm kind of, sort of, but I want to also let people know that it too can happen to anybody. And I want to make sure that everybody understands what I've done and what the work of senators and legislators and what's coming down the pipeline right now.
So it's interesting that you say mental health is not a visible illness.
Yes.
Would you say it's the same thing for people on the spectrum? So if someone is diagnosed with autism,
yes,
it's not a visible, if I had a cast on my foot, I'd be treated with a little more kindness and patience walking through, a rotating door, whereas somebody with a mental health issue,
you're absolutely right. And that's how, and I found that out with my son. My son is now 23. Back in that day, especially in the black community, most people didn't know autism. And so they're like, what's wrong with the child? We're very disciplined, very old school, like, even in an Irish family. So it's like, sit still. So most people just shied away from my son or was like, what's wrong with him, kind of, sort of. So autism was definitely in the more Caucasian race than it was in the black community. So I learned a lot that people could look at my son and said there's nothing wrong with him. However, he was severely autistic, verbal, but he had receptive expressive language disorder. And because he couldn't speak, they thought he was being rude.
Yes, coming from the public school systems, it's extremely difficult to have children diagnosed appropriately,
Yes.
and you have to be able to communicate with
Right.
the family and the teaching
Right.
staff and everybody to
Right,
find
because
out.
they're the
Yes.
advocates for the child because they're
Yes.
the ones who know them best because they can't speak on their own.
Exactly, exactly. So I definitely understand, and living through the studies of underreported
Yes.
in the people of color community
Yes.
for autism. So
Yes, exactly.
it's absolutely, I mean, to one degree it started because everybody was like, oh, they're disadvantaged.
Right.
Oh, they're
ADHD, they're disruptive,
yeah,
their behavior.
Right, and they didn't go as far as.
No, they
And
didn't.
sometimes it did take a mental health professional to say, it's
Exactly.
not mental health, it's autism.
Can I just make something apparent to you? My son was born pretty healthy, and then 2 or 3 months down, he started getting asthma, and then after that, maybe at age, he was delayed in speech, and then by age 3, he was having seizures. And we found out he was at multiple types of seizures, and one of them was partial complex, which manifests itself in behavior. So
Oh,
he would
my
be sitting
goodness.
here with you talking, and then standing on the desk the next minute. So it was all behavior to them. But in that, after he was diagnosed with the seizures, we found out he was autistic, delayed because of that, the medical issues. So that happens a lot.
And the same thing with the mental health
Yes.
with the students is that, they present one way,
Exactly.
but the interpretation is the other, which is why the ABA
Right.
field is booming because you need to know what the antecedent is.
Exactly. And
Right,
a lot
so-
of people just don't know. They just, automatically code it or diagnose it as a bad behavior. They're calling parents. A lot of our parents have to work. And a lot of our parents are being forced to come get their children. If they don't, then they're calling DCF, which is a major problem in the black and brown community.
Right.
DCF is being called in astronomical numbers for minute stuff. I mean, stuff that you say the parent may not even understand. And so people are losing their jobs. They're frustrated because, they really need, the income in order to survive. And so it becomes a really big problem within our family structures.
So I would like to go back to how you got involved specifically with this particular issue. I mean, you sound like a wonderful advocate for all kinds of people.
I am.
And you're using the skills you learn on one adventure
you.
in advocacy to apply to another.
Yes.
This next one, though, is extremely personal.
It is.
Could you please tell me what
So
brought you here?
I've been an advocate and a champion for advocacy for all people. When I came, this is 99 going forward. When I came here, I started looking in. I'm like, wow, this is people don't know the resources that are in Connecticut. Everybody talks in acronyms. They automatically tell people to look on the website. I'm like, everybody doesn't have internet services, and everybody doesn't know the acronyms. So I wanted to make sure that I understood what people wanted, and I spent 2 or 3 years just making sure I connected people with the services that I was available to. So I sat on 10 boards. I was on CBAC, which is Children's Behavior Advisory Board. I'm also a board member of Connecticut Council for Development Disabilities, DCF RAC, and in NAMI, just minor, other groups, whatever. I trained through them. And so in all that, I was sharing my experience of what I've seen in the community, and parents saying, "Oh, these services aren't available in our community. That nobody's reaching out to us. We don't know how to access this stuff." And so also explaining their experiences when they enter the ER, or enter, a mental health facility, or talk to their PCP, and how they're not being taken serious. So in 2017. Probably maybe 6 months after I got in here, my own family experienced a traumatic experience. My grandkids were kidnapped by their stepfather, traumatized, physically abused, molested. And from that point on, for the next 3 years, it was just horrible. I mean, horrible in the sense of they went from, nice, obedient kids, happy, to PTSD, mental health issues. And we tried everything we could to get services and get assistance. And for me, somebody who has been in this field for years, advocating for my daughter,
Right.
and my daughter's a nurse, we were totally discriminated. We were laughed at. We were made mockery of. We were questioned as to our credentials. My daughter's background was scrubbed by clinicians, not by DCF. DCF was called 7 times on us, unfounded cases. And so they finally coded the kids Charles-Mountain syndrome by proxy. So as a result of that, my daughter got frustrated. She was like, I'm not going back. They're not listening to me. We can come in with a video or a picture she drew with us in coffins, and they're like, that's expressive writing. Or she's not doing that right now, so there's no reason for us to keep them. And if we were saying, listen, we can't handle this right now, then can she stay? Then they would threaten to call DCF.
So she was obsessed with death at what age?
This is 11.
At age 11.
11, between 10, 11, and then 12. Mm-hmm.
And it was manifesting in other ways.
Exactly.
You were calling attention to it and
Yes.
asking for help.
Videos.
So you guys were doing everything you possibly
Every
could.
single thing. And because I am in the field and trained, You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what is
I'd
going
want you
on?
in my corner.
Right, no, really, I'm like, what's going on? I mean, are you serious? I mean, just the way that they just made a mockery. You know what I'm saying? We were at one facility, and they didn't want her there. And so they called us and said she had a seizure. So we rushed to the hospital to meet them there. As soon as we got there, they left. I'm like, where are you going? So they were like, no, you have it now. So when they cleared her, we're like, come back and get her. They're like, no, we don't want her anymore. And they just made up this bogus excuse about a peanut allergy. We rushed to them to like, no, you got to take her because technically she wasn't supposed to be with us. And they said they would threaten to call the police if we didn't leave the premises. No medicine, no clothes. It was just the most, I mean, I had never in my life experienced anything so outlandish, and they thought it was okay, and they got away with it. I mean, this is what's been going on. And most people who don't have the privilege of knowing what their rights are because they're so scared that I'm saying that somebody's going to call DCF or they just don't want to get in trouble with their kids or they want their kids taken away. They don't exercise their right. And I'm just a firm believer in fighting for my rights and speaking up for myself. So this stuff happens here because nobody speaks up in our Black and brown community, and they capitalize off that.
Well, in general, the shame of the whole mental health illness.
Exactly.
And it is exasperated, I believe,
It has.
in the people of color
It
community
has.
because even it's another thing of, oh, I am not, 100%. There's something
Exactly.
wrong, so I don't want to admit that because you're already
Exactly.
looking at me differently.
Exactly.
The schools struggle with getting information out too. So
Exactly.
even at the school level where the teachers, I mean, we don't do it for the glory.
No, you do
but
it because it's in your heart.
So we're sharing as much information.
Exactly.
And advocacy is great, but again, the frustration.
Very frustrating.
What happened later?
So, as a result of that, my daughter gave up and she was like, "Listen, I don't want to deal with this anymore." Because every time she went to the ER, they were calling DCF.
She's at risk of yes.
Right, and it
of
wasn't
losing her
because she
children.
didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
She's like, "Listen, she needs to stay here." So they're like, "If you leave her, it's neglect, it's abuse."
abandonment.
So that's because they didn't want to deal with it. So as a result, maybe like 6 months later, her last in-state patient visit, she killed my grandson. My daughter, because she protected herself because it was a domestic violence situation. She had a registered gun. It was locked up, safe and sound. We have no idea how she got into the case. It was locked. And while my daughter was at work, when she went to switch, the babysitter came outside and heard her go inside. She shot my grandson while he was asleep. No rhyme or reason. We still don't understand to this day. It's really devastating because nobody took her serious. And she has had a history of drawing us in coffins with our names, chasing us around the house with knives, telling us that she had to finish the assignment by killing us. So all this stuff is like videotaped and documented. And who, regardless of what color you are, who could really, handle that? If a parent says to you that they can't handle it, I just don't understand why people aren't more compassionate.
Where is she now?
She's in true psychiatric right now, and they're pushing her out. They don't have anything for her right now. They're saying that it's a time limit. Oh, you've been here for a year, it's time to go. Next would be PRT. Oh, it's only 4 months, and after that, you have to go. So instead of working with the child and doing what's in the best interest of the child, it's all about timetable.
Yes.
It's all about the length of time. And
Yes.
so that's what's most frustrating.
So the insurance companies and the paper pushers are determining, oh, this is what you get. And
Actually, it's
that's
the
it.
doctors. It's the facilities.
doctors,
Right, it's the
too.
facilities. And I was shocked by that. They really feel like you have to stay only a certain limit, and after that, you have to go.
And have you been finding tools and services that can help you and your family? And
No, because we
afterwards?
actually sit at the table with everybody. We have Beacon Health, we have DCF. Everybody's at the table, and everybody's just basically frustrated in the sense of what do you do? And so my whole thing is one of the biggest pieces is that most people don't know how to navigate the system.
Right.
So what happens is they immediately take their child home, and then something else happens, or something happens that we don't know about, or what happened, all this violence in the inner cities. We don't know because they're not having access to the care that they need, and there's a huge gap with regards to and breakdown with regards to cultural competency. You know what I'm saying? And there's also the racial implicit biases. Automatically, because the doctors aren't culturally competent, they automatically assume or stereotype, and that's just truly not right. I mean, it happened to us personally, and that's why I can say that. This goes on a lot.
And being someone on the other side of the table in an IEP meeting, I can assure you that it does happen.
It does.
And it's unfortunate, and a lot of times teachers and advocates in the school system run up against the same thing that
Right.
parents do.
I believe you. I've seen that.
And it can be very, very frustrating on all levels. And a lot of times, teachers and school staff can't even say certain things
No.
in order to, they need to preserve the job.
The integrity of the job or the establishment. Isn't that the Board of Ed? I've seen that as well, too.
Yes, so
Yeah.
it's very difficult. You get stifled across the board.
It is.
So I do want to show.
Sure, you
this.
can.
This is
Novon.
the official statement. Novon Edwards. And would you tell us a little bit about this?
So Novon was autistic, and so that's the sad part about all this. I mean, he was, very high-strung. He was also speech delayed, and so, he was very frustrated, when he was younger, but then he learned a lot. So he was just a kid that was all over the place. I'm saying a lot of energy, very quirky. He had his own things he liked. He loved his TV, he loved his music, he loved his laptop. We don't understand it. I'm saying? It was just like my daughter came home for lunch, they were fine, and next thing we know, I'm saying, when she comes home, this was done. So this to us is really hard because he was asleep. And so
it was not like there was an altercation
there was no
or anything.
altercation.
But with
nothing.
mental illness, there is no rhyme or reason.
But see, that's the sad part for us. If this can happen with two people in the household that are very versed, my daughter's a nurse, and my son's autistic, we know it.
Yeah.
This could happen to anybody. You know what I'm saying? And any of us could have been killed, you know what I'm saying? Or we just don't know. And so this is the scary part about it. Who doesn't take this serious? And then when I did the research in Connecticut, I think this has only happened one time, and it was a younger boy in West Hartford. But you have to take this stuff serious. I mean, most people in the black community and black and brown community, they're very prideful, they're very private. Mental health is taboo in our community.
Yes.
So we don't really want to talk about it, we don't want to admit it. So when you find a black or brown parent who's saying, listen, I can't handle this, there's something wrong, please listen. You know what I'm saying, there's something wrong.
And when you get the support of the family unit of multi-generations,
exactly.
saying, please help my child,
exactly.
they need it.
Exactly.
That should be a red flag
it
to anybody involved.
It should be a red flag. So to this day, we don't know what happened. She talked to my daughter at a certain time. They were fine. My grandson was sleeping. All of a sudden, this happened. And she's admitted it since then. But based on the now understanding, it was into these different parts, which is multiple personalities. And so my point now would be, there's rushing her through any treatment and have not significantly diagnosed her as anything but PTSD. So how do you, so how do you as a parent, or how do you get further services from her if nobody in acute or PRTF wants to diagnose it for what it really is? And that's the part that's really heartbreaking to my daughter, because right now we have the opportunity to treat her. I mean, she could be in jail, but she's not, because she needs a treatment. This is seriously a mental health issue, more so than a criminal, and nobody wants to open up Pandora's box on their watch, but it was okay for us to live with it. So to me, I'm just very frustrated in the sense of, we need to know what happened, why, how can we help her, because now's the perfect time. So she's been basically sitting for 2 years with PTSD.
And that's it.
And that's it.
So if this were to happen today, before the tragedy of the death, is there a path a parent can follow that you can suggest?
Well, I would tell parents to get connected, and that's one of the things I advocated for, what I'm going to talk about in the bill, is a parent liaison. It's really important that parents have an advocate in the ER, doctor's offices. There's a patient advocate if you're an inpatient in a hospital. However, when it comes to the ER, there's nobody that can really advocate for the parent and help them navigate through the system. You're given a packet or tell them to go online, look at these different facilities and services. But I really believe that parents need to have somebody who works on their behalf, non-governmental. I mean, in the sense of not DCF, not any other agency. It has to be somebody who has to be a peer specialist, maybe. Somebody who can come in and say, listen, this is what you should do next. These are the services you connect to. And make sure that the family's interest is always protected, especially in the underserved communities. I feel that most parents just get along to go along, kind of, sort of, because they don't want to rock the boat.
We both said at the same time.
Rock the boat.
Exactly,
However, it's very detrimental, and a lot of parents don't tell the truth. There's a lot of parents.
Because they're fearful of the response and the whole stigma of mental health. Because, again, yes, it is a stigma in society in general, but I do believe it's even considered worse.
It's worse. So this is stuff that's really going on, where parents are really overwhelmed. They're frustrated with the physical and mental behaviors of kids that are just erratic. You know what I'm saying? And they really don't have they don't know what to do. But there's really nothing for them to do, or they don't know the resources, because nobody's just going to come and say, you know what, let's take your kid for a while, whatever, or help them out.
So when I first moved to the state, I was told to have in emergency situations, which called the 211 number.
211 is awesome.
Okay, so once someone calls the number, then what do they say? How do they move forward from there?
So 211 is basically the state database. I really rely on that. I really think it's awesome. I think a lot is underutilized. You call 211, and if you have a crisis situation, they have mobile crisis for school, and they can connect you with other services if it's not in school. So I would definitely depend on 211 because it has the largest database of resources in Connecticut.
So if you know your child, some people don't know when something gets to that level, whether
Right.
it's mental health
Right.
or something else.
Right.
But if you already know your child is having a crisis,
I would call 211.
211.
And 211, the mobile crisis is basically, centralized for school.
Yes.
But in the new bill, it's 24 hours a day now, which it wasn't before. They cut off at like 11 o'clock at night. And I do believe it's going to be for anything, like anything at home. Also, the HEART team is also something that was put together so that they can escort police officers to, mental health crises in the community. I think it's children as well, too, but it's definitely adults as well, too.
okay. Well, we'll make sure we have that information available too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in all of this, I fought even harder to legislate, and one of the biggest things I wanted to do was tell the story. And I was telling the story third person for my daughter because she wasn't ready to talk about it.
I could
But
imagine.
I felt as though the story needed to be heard. I didn't want to be swept underneath the rug. And I also took it personal that I can sit on all these boards and be very active and very vocal, and my grandson died as a result of it. And so to me,
If it
it's
could
like,
happen to you, it could happen
and
to anybody.
that's what I was trying to convey, the fact that this happened to me and I'm very well connected. And so I wanted people to know that my heart sank, but I wasn't going to give up. I could have walked away, we could have moved, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make a profound change, and I want people to know that, it's a systematic issue, and not for them to, feel bad about anything that they're doing personally, but it's just for them, for them to understand that this happened to me. And so as a result of it, I wanted to share the experience that I had and also fight harder so it doesn't happen to anybody else or no other family had to, go through this process.
So I have in front of me a copy of the Senate Bill 451. This is an act establishing a working group to study the expansion of mental health resources to children.
Right.
And what exactly do you want to get out of the bill once it's,
Well, the bill has a lot of components. One of the things was the parent liaison.
The liaison,
Also,
yes.
access to more funding. I think it's billions of dollars that approximately that are being poured into it. I think it's the largest dollar amount of bill that's been passed recently.
Wow.
It was voted unanimously for both parties, so it was a bipartisan effort. I want to really give kudos to Senator Kelly, who actually his team sat down and walked me and my daughter through everything. They looked at all the videos, all the paperwork to show that this is a real crisis and this happened to us. Senator Formica, Exum, also who else did I think about it? There's like so many of them. And Summers as well too.
Yep.
Senator Amwa. And so these are state reps and senators that sat down and really fought hard to get this bill to go through. As a result of them pushing the bill through, Senator Kelly thought it would be in the best interest, for the bill to be named after my grandson.
That sounds like a great
and so
idea.
That's what 451 is. But that bill is just stale right this minute. And so what happened was that the 5001 bill, which is HB 5001, which is the big children's health crisis bill, did go through. Also SB1 and SB2, which were more geared towards educational. However, they haven't acknowledged this, and I actually went to the bill signing, and they haven't acknowledged it either. My grandkids' names weren't mentioned, and I wasn't acknowledged as well too. And that's the hard part, because when people see that, and I had a lot of people, believe in the system, they were really disappointed in the fact that after all of this and all the work that was done, they're still not acknowledged. So my thing is to, not complain, but to explain again how people in the community, regardless of what color you are, feel as though the system's not within their favor, because how could you not acknowledge the two kids that generated so much energy. That started this, and myself, who was open enough to bring it to fruition, and then my daughter, who for the first time testified in the public hearing. In the public, she has never spoken to anybody. So I'm disappointed, and I don't mind saying it on the air. I do want to definitely give kudos to Senator Kelly for always believing in us, backing us. Nicole is his assistant, and they always, had our best interests at heart. However, from a governmental standpoint, they just didn't acknowledge it. And so this is what the Black and Brown community looks at. How could you not, acknowledge the fact of what happened? And it didn't happen to any fault of our own. It was through the system that you're now fixing. So the system is going to be fixed, and that's what I wanted to make sure. I just want to make sure people have access to everything, and I want to make sure that they ask. Ask for anything, and because you can't be denied at this point because there's so many services that are going to be available.
And getting involved too with your community. I know it didn't prevent you personally being devastated, but being part of the community and knowing how to move throughout the systems, that I'm sure that helps. So to have people get involved. ask questions.
Yes.
As someone who's been on both sides of the IEP table for children, always ask if there's more.
Right, exactly.
Because there are other organizations that partner on and they lead into each other.
Ask a lot of questions, just don't take anything at face value, and connect with with community agencies that are there who are working on behalf of you, like Favor CT, VCN, NAMI. They have classes on how to be the best advocate for your kids. Those programs are being underused, underutilized. And I also think that they need to expand into the urban, rural areas, and also basically in the urban areas as well too, because even in the urban and the rural areas, people can't get to these programs before COVID. So just now I really feel like everything's going to be Zoom, so people should pay attention to that, and they should do a mass campaign for marketing to make sure that people are aware of what's available.
And I think that is where a lot of things fall through the cracks when it comes to people wanting to do good. They don't realize that, well, you need also social media presence. You need to, I mean, nowadays it is social media.
It is.
Advertising, marketing, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It's like, great, we got all this information, but now we need a grant or funding to help us get the information out.
Exactly, to the community.
So the more times you can, volunteer and help where you can.
Exactly.
And partner people up.
Exactly, and share the information. I mean, I share everything. You never know who will benefit.
I would really encourage folks to go to your webpage,
Yes.
go to your Facebook page,
Yes.
and we'll have that information up. Get informed.
Yes.
Find out what services are available.
Yes.
Don't be ashamed.
Nope, please don't.
I've done
Please
a lot
don't.
of I've done a lot of things with the VCN
Yes,
and other organizations, and there are just there's a
Everybody's
diaper
so
bank.
friendly. There is a diaper bank.
There's a diaper bank.
Yes, exactly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people. 211 will give you all that information. 211 takes your zip code and tell you what resources are in your area, and hones in on that. And that's the most important fact, that people just need to call and utilize the resources that are available, because everything's been bumped up to make it more accessible and more funding.
More funding.
For those resources as well too.
I think actually, based on the fact that this is such a difficult subject to talk about, that we are ending on a high note in the sense that the service is available.
They are available, and I just want to say that they did an excellent job, meaning the state reps, the senators, bipartisan across the aisle. The Democrats and Republicans really don't get along. But for this, they really did, and I'm so proud and impressed with them.
Yeah.
And the bill is just loaded with stuff and services for people in the community. I think that people should take advantage of that and don't feel as though they're alone.
Right.
Because this is suicide prevention, homicidal tendencies, especially with COVID. COVID has, unveiled the disparities in all communities, and so now everybody's taking a look at that, and it's being treated very seriously.
Absolutely.
And especially with all the school shootings and stuff like that. So please take advantage of the resources. I fought so hard, me as a person on the ground, to make sure that my voice was heard and my grandson's situation was an example, so other people wouldn't have to go through what we went through. And I just want to make sure that you guys understand, I did that for everybody. I didn't have any particular community in mind. I just wanted to make sure they understood that it's really bad in the underserved communities of people of color. However, this is across the board, because mental health crisis is an equal opportunity disabler.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. I really appreciate you listening.
Well, I feel your pain, and for the personal level, but also the frustration on the other side.
Yes.
So I would like to let everyone know that there are urgent care facilities, acute care facilities. There are services available. So please reach out, contact your local towns, communities, the VCN, go to SoliDarity,
DCF.
and DCF. DCF can be your
Very
advocate.
instrumental, they can be.
They really can.
They
I don't
can
want
be.
people to be afraid of them, because they can be very helpful. They're just overwhelmed. In the meantime, thank you so much for choosing to watch CVC interviews. Thank you for coming in today.
No problem.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It really means a lot to me to be able to spread the word of, a disparity or devastation that happened, and how the end of it is so productive for other people. And I want people to please use the resources, whether you have to go through your school, your churches, your community organizations. Please ask for help, because it's there.
It's there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.